Welcome back, radio entrepreneurs, listeners, and fans. I'm producer Jillian King, and I'm excited to introduce you all to part two of the Spring 2024 FBA Family Business Discussion, revealing the secrets to family business success, building your great family business in 2024. If you have not yet seen part one of this panel discussion, we recommend you head over to radioentrepreneurs.com or any of our many channels to catch the first segment. This segment is part of our broader series on building family business success. All of these discussions are intended to be highly relevant to family businesses, but also to entrepreneurs of all types. So be sure to follow Radio Entrepreneurs on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Spotify, or any of the many other platforms we stream on to catch the third segment as it goes live. Next, I will introduce our panelists and the moderator for this discussion. We are joined today by Stephen Wilchins, founding partner at Wilchins, Cosentino, and Novins, Richard Hirschen, partner at Gray Gray & Gray, Sandy Davis, president of HRG Development and formerly president of Pioneer Consolidated, Kristen Burke, chief growth officer of Burke Distributing Corporation, and Michael Nowak, president of Redemption Plus. Welcome all. Last but not least, Radio Entrepreneurs host and founder of Mage LLC, Jeffrey Davis. Welcome, Jeffrey. I will now hand the conversation over to you.
Thank you, Jillian. And for those who have not heard our first segment, I encourage all of you, like Jillian did, to listen to our first segment. There is unbelievable knowledge and wisdom in the experience of family business, multiple generations who have been successful. I want to start with this question. I said in our last segment, it's a jump ball for whoever wants it first. But each one of you have been involved in transitions of your family businesses. What would you say are the keys to a successful transition and what other people may have to know as well?
I'll jump into that one. I think it's really understanding the business is the absolute key. So, with me, I've worked in, I don't think there's a department I haven't actually worked in. I think that's absolutely key to really understand the business. It's super. I think a lot of pitfalls are family members come in and they automatically think that they are going to be a manager or that they should be a manager. And so one, how well are you really going to know the business coming in, just trying to be a manager without, kind of working from the ground up? And then two, what message is it sending to the employees when they see a family member coming in and getting a title because of just a family member? So I think starting from the bottom and really understanding the business is incredibly important.
Anybody else want to take that one?
Yeah, I completely agree with everything that you said. I also think having a complete understanding of 360 understanding of the business is helpful for yourself. I know I always struggled with imposter syndrome just because of being a family member. So being able to have that legitimacy, both for employees, external like customers, suppliers, and for yourself, I think is really important. And also on a softer side of the transition, being respectful of the current leaders and navigating that, because obviously this is their baby, and trying to meet in the middle while not getting your voice lost, I think is important just for that transitional period, making them feel comfortable and yourself and the employees as you go through that. It's always a delicate balance, trying to navigate that, at least with my father, is an ongoing process.
And I think actually piggybacking off of that, so early on, I came in and I'm like, why are we doing this way? You should be doing it this way and that way. And I've learned that it's a really good thing. It works really, really well. And there's certain reasons why we do things. And I think it's just maturity as I've gotten older, that it's actually a really well-oiled machine. And so there's like little tweaks you can make, but there's really good processes, and it took me just time to understand it. I came in here, we should be doing this, and this, and like really bad ideas. So taking the time to understand why processes, markets were put in place is super helpful.
And on the flip, completely agree. It's like asking why before imparting an opinion is important. But I think with family businesses, oftentimes the answer is it's because the way we've always done it. So
yeah.
finding those nuggets of opportunity to change while respecting the processes that are efficient and do work best for the business.
So when do you feel comfortable raising the idea that maybe we should be thinking about changing how we handle something? Do you have to gain the respect of your family members before you raise that issue?
And let me add to that, Steve, before I don't know a lot about Michael's situation, but Kristen is in a situation that she has family members, and communication and respectful communication is very much a part of that, and not hurting people's feelings. On the other side, Sandy from the start was in the middle of conflict. So it's a good contrast. So maybe they can answer Steve's question now. No.
Well, I can say that for me, gaining the trust of the trustees was key, because I came in quite abruptly. I came in at the top. I didn't have the chance or the opportunity to work my way up. And so I'm sitting basically in my father's chair, his predecessor's chair. And I tried my best to, walk through. This was a manufacturing company, get to know all of the employees. I had known them briefly from years of visiting the company, but they'd certainly never seen me, in the role of CEO. So I really learned everything that I possibly could about how every bit of the company worked. Dug into the finances, learned how the systems were put together, where the parts came from, all the distributors. I worked with all my management team, and eventually I gained, the respect of not only all the employees there, but the trustees. At the beginning, it was a battle, and they were split. I actually gained the trust of the CPA before I did the attorney, and we had some battles, but eventually they all came around, and we ended up as a team. So, but it was definitely an uphill battle. But I did not. My mother and sister were full support of me, so I never had the family conflict. It was the trustees.
Sandy, do you recall if your mom or you had the right to remove?
No, I do recall very well. No, my father's trust was irrevocable. And if that's something that you would like to get into, I can certainly give very strong opinions.
Written by one of the trustees.
There should be a removal clause in trusts. I don't think it should be an easy thing where, another generation or family can just, willy-nilly, get multiple trustees. But to be in a situation that I was in was very, very difficult. It was very hard to make change in the business. They were very set in their ways and the former CEO's ways. And it took an awful lot of hard work and convincing and meetings and fights to get where we needed. So yes, there should be a removal clause in certain situations.
Family members or for outside trustees?
Well, but I did not need to remove my mother. She was the one trustee I didn't want to remove, but it was really 2 against 1, even though there were 3 trustees, and the attorney had written the trust with my dad, and my dad had trusted him, but the 2 of them were able to outvote my mother, and they did frequently. So she was really, she had no say.
And just to add context to that, Steve, Sandy was on the board originally. And when she made a suggestion that they didn't like, they threw her off the board, and they threatened her mother that they were going to take her mother off the board if she pursued defending the position that Sandy had taken, which was not an unrealistic position. So these trustees thought they were all powerful.
So we were talking about learning and maybe making changes to the business, and y'all gave some great suggestions. I'm curious and be really interested with you, Kristen, of having decided in grade 5 that you wanted to go into the business, but what training or learning did you do before you even got to the business to help you be successful once you arrived there?
Good
Yeah.
question.
Yeah, so I grew up every summer working at Burke. And then, but because I knew at such a young age that this is what I wanted to do, pretty much, and it's both a blessing and a curse, really made a lot of decisions hyper focused on this long-term goal where I went to school, I went to Babson, both for my undergrad and for my master's, and then knew that I wanted to leave Burke because it's so important, particularly in the beer business. There's 3 tiers of the beer business, and trying to work in different tiers to learn different perspectives. And Boston Beer has one of the most incredible training programs. So I knew I wanted to go work for them, and I wanted to be geographically as far away from Burke as possible, because I think sometimes you get lost in legacy and loyalty for a family business, but you have to love it, or else it's an unsustainable job for you to do. So I left to go ensure that I loved the beer business. I didn't love Burke distributing. And so that was critical for me. So then when I came back, also working in every department, I think is very important. And just I just made every decision around trying to have the best education to go into this position, whether it be a job, school, you know. So I hope that answers your
That
question.
was great. Great answer.
Does anybody else want to answer that question that Rich asked?
Yeah, one of the best trainings that I ever had is very unconventional, but it makes total sense kind of looking back and connecting the dots. I gave up the Wall Street job to go into a program called Teach for America. And I was a school teacher, special education, high school math in inner city Philadelphia. And that was the best management experience I could have ever asked for. You're put into a situation where the students inherently struggle at your topic. So for me, it was math. On top of that, there's, students have emotional issues and students with autism. And you, through Teach for America, you have a very high standard. So I learned about setting, a standard, in the company. And your job is to make sure that everybody hits that standard, right? And then how do you motivate people? How do you learn the different nuances of each employee and how to get them towards a common goal? And that has just been so invaluable. And if I'm ever having a people issue, I think back to my school teaching days.
Sandy, do you want to jump in on that one too? You had some corporate experience that, even though it wasn't in the truck cover business or land.
Well, there's no question, all of my experiences, especially being a business owner, I had owned restaurants. So being in the position of the buck stops here was invaluable. And I was on the young side. When I had started, I did work in several other restaurants before I had my own, but being, in the hot seat, making the hard decisions, struggling, when the good times, bad times, trying to innovate, make changes. So, when I was going into a manufacturing, completely different type of industry, I was a little bit concerned. But when I sat down and financials are financials. If you know how to read them, how to watch the bottom line, it's just shifting over to another industry. It's nuts and bolts instead of steaks and fish. So, and the people are people. The employees. Restaurants have a very eclectic, unusual breed of individuals that they attract from the kitchen down. I always found it fascinating. Great people. Some are, still good friends to this day. And I found the same thing in my father's business. There were people that were so loyal to him and to my mother and to my family. I also have relationships with people in the business to this day. So I don't know if that says it, but yes, I mean, to have the background is wonderful in people and in just business.
So since all of you have experience outside of your family business, which is something that I know that most professionals I know believe in, it does transfer well, and you just don't learn from the family. What are some of the things you may have learned in the corporate world that should be transferable to a family business?
Structure. So, we definitely still run like a very big startup where it's a lot of like running and gunning. And so what I've learned, so after teaching, I became a management consultant. So I learned a lot about like systems, processes, and structure. So I took that into the business, and that was great. Like actually coming up with like a system, right? Okay, we have a system now. How are the processes within the system? Like we weren't really doing a lot of that. It wasn't really documented. You had somebody doing the same job for 20 years, right? And they had all the knowledge of kind of institutionalizing the systems and processes was very helpful. And I took that away from my time at management consulting.
Anybody else?
Well, I would just add, I think it's with family businesses, it's very hard. I think Sandy spoke to it too, like long-term employees, long-term processes. Sometimes, when we're discussing things at work, I try to remove the person and just talk about the position, which is, a lot easier to do in the corporate world. So what is best for that position? How should that position be run? Where are the efficiencies to be found? And not speaking about the individual and maybe adapting for their strengths or weaknesses is something that's been very helpful.
When I worked in corporate structure that was outside of my own business or my family business, I learned a lot, but I didn't like being in it. I liked having more control, having more say. I think I come by it rightly. My father worked with his dad. He had started actually in farm equipment, and it evolved into all these businesses that he was able to do. But I know that, corporate America is, many people are much more comfortable in that than being entrepreneurial, but it really wasn't something I enjoyed. But I will say though, that the learning and the structure is very valuable, no question. But it's the style, it's the people, it's the way people are treated really, that I found not to my liking.
Well, I have to quote another party who did something once that I saw, which I'm sure you'll all understand. It's the great Robert Rosenfield of J.N. Phillips and other companies. And when he announced to his family in a strategic meeting, which the business had always been run in a paternalistic way, where everybody was entitled to full salary and executive positions, that he was going to run the company as a full meritocracy. That was met with a lot of resistance. But that theme, that simple theme of meritocracy, you got to perform or it doesn't work and you don't move up and you don't get, was the theme that really drove the business and changed and transformed that company to what it turned into. So I think that that's important and that value he learned in a corporate world. I'm going to shift a little bit if you don't mind, because all of you have dealt with legal structures. I'm just wondering how potentially governance helps in the success of your business or could help in the success of your business. I know, Sandy, you had a lot of governance to your company.
Yes, not to my liking though, unfortunately. I think trustees can be invaluable, or maybe it doesn't have to be trustees. It can be advisors, other board members that are outside of family. But, it can be a very negative experience. As I said, if your hands are tied and you're in a situation where you can't make change and remove people that don't understand what you believe needs to be done, and know that it's right. And So, governance is certainly important, but you need to have some control over who's doing the governance is really the most important thing, I would say.
So Sandy, how would you have changed how that structure would have been presented to you? I mean, if you
How
keep,
would I have changed?
I mean, are you asking that you should have had the right to remove the trustees?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, I do. And I wouldn't have done it until there was absolutely no other option. And it almost came to that. It was a long, very long battle. And it did work out in the end, but maybe it only worked out because I had no choice. And really, they didn't either. But it would have been a lot more easier and more helpful if I could have made, some changes to people that had my vision and wanted to go in the same direction. It would have saved some time and a lot of aggravation.
And
Was Sandy part of the business when your dad made those changes originally? And maybe if Sandy was part of the business at the time those documents were drafted, it may have been presented differently.
There's no question, you're right. And whether or not is that my fault? Yes. As I said, my father always wanted me to be working by his side, and it just wasn't what I wanted. And he was respectful of that. But if I had been running the business with him, it probably would have been a different structure. He died, at 65 years old. He was ill for about 7 years. He was still working to the end, but he had to put in place, a structure that he felt comfortable would continue. He knew the business was profitable, and he did have, someone running it, and he trusted these people, the trustees, and he wanted it to go on until they deemed it necessary to be sold. And that was all in their hands. So, and we did look at selling it. When I first came in, we did look at appraising the business, but it wasn't the right time. It was more profitable to keep the business going than what the value was. So that's why we had to spend all the time and years to revamp and grow it till it was the right time.
I'm just going to jump in a little bit because Kristen has also sort of inherited a legal structure, shareholder structure. And I don't know if she had input when it was originally done, but she has to work within the confines of what may be helpful, but also not helpful at times.
Yeah, I was not a part of that structure when it was built, but we do have an amazing board of advisors, and I think obviously, Sandy, you've highlighted some of the pitfalls that can really hinder management, but for us, it's great because there's still currently three Burke owners still involved in the business, and having outside counsel to help navigate some of these decisions, it also removes it being personal and offers, an outside perspective, much more objective to evaluate opportunities. Has been very, very helpful for us just to be able to see other people's perspectives and it not just be, when you're too close to it, sometimes it's hard for you to really step back and see the full opportunity that's in front of you. And not only that, like Jeff's been amazing with help navigating conflict if certain parties don't agree. So just having outside counsel, I think, is critical for family businesses.
Before we finish this segment, Michael, is there something you want to add to that?
No, I know we keep it very, very simple. So there's not a formal board structure. There's not formal outside counsel, but there is people that we do lean on for advice, whether it's legal people, or whatever. But we try to keep the control very centralized and keep it very, very simple.
Good. Our producer, Jillian King, who does a wonderful job of organizing these panels and all the radio entrepreneurs interviews. Turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. That was a stirring discussion of what it takes to make a successful family business. That wraps up part 2 of this Spring 2024 FBA Family Business Panel discussion. Thank you to all our listeners and viewers who have tuned in for this panel. Links will be provided in the video's description below to part 1 if you didn't already hear it, and to part 3 of the discussion to hear more on these topics. And if you're a fan of our videos, please be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, and press that bell button. And for more on the topic, tune in to our continuing series on family business success. Radio Entrepreneurs is also active on LinkedIn, so follow our page there as well for more business advice and riveting business discussions all year round. Until next time, goodbye and thanks for listening. We'll be back with more stories on Radio Entrepreneurs.